Hello and welcome to Warblog. This is Operation Hawk. It's part of the Malayan emergency. I don't know why I picked this one. I essentially saw a book in the library on the Malayan emergency, and I've got a book on it. Well, a book on English operations, and looks sort of interesting. I mean, essentially, well, pretty sort of I want to go through the mechanics of playing. Essentially, the Malayan emergency. I don't want to go through this all the history really, but after the Second World War, the sort of Malayans they basically started to resist British rule. Well, at least an element of the Malayan population who were sort of basically communists and looking to set up a communist party. They existed before. They used to have the Malayan people's anti-Japanese force. And they resisted Japanese occupation in Malaya during the Second World War, and then when they were after the Second World War, they were demobilized, and they gave some of their weapons back in, but they kept and stashed quite a few. They were also formed into a sort of a home guard, I think, and they were given some weapons, but they also had some weapons that they had got off the Japanese when the Japanese basically surrendered. And so essentially, after about 3 years, I think about 48, well, there were some things that they didn't mean to, the Malayan Communist Party, MCP, they didn't actually mean to start the civil war, or start the resistance, but there were some shootings of some landowners, and it sort of precipitated from there. I think they wanted a bit more time to organise, and wound up with about sort of 12 years of guerrilla insurgency, and it's quite interesting really, especially considering it's the British, the Commonwealth, and they, in this sort of scenario, it's one of the first where they're actually chasing some what they call terrorists in the jungle. And I really want to just stop playing it, but I've actually one of the things about this site, Warblog, as you're watching, is I am a historian, a sort of amateur, but I have a lot of stuff behind me, all in one particular vein. But this is fairly new, and the whole sort of warbloggy thing is actually growing on me. I mean, basically, when I bring up the term historian, what I'm talking about is research, and I don't do a lot of primary research, although I do go to some archives, and I've got some experience in that area. But what I'm getting to is old newspaper articles, and I've actually got an article from the Times newspaper. I've got the whole access. I've got access to the whole thing, and for quite a few of these games, where they're not sort of current, I'm actually going to start doing a little more research and figure out what was what. But this is dated the 25th of May. Now, I don't know whether it is Operation Hawk, but it pretty much sounds like it was. One of the things that was key to this particular sort of operation, and quite a few of the operations, were the fact that they were doing air insertions, hence all these units down here. Now the article, well, but basically there's a book. It's actually, I can't remember what it's called. It's called The Malayan Emergency in Pictures or something. It's actually pretty good. For some reason it's not available for purchase. I wouldn't buy it because I've got it in the library. But it's I can't remember what I was talking about now. But basically, the key to this is that it's the first time that they did air insertions. So and it's all jungle, as you can see, so there was nowhere to land. They had no landing zones, and this was before Vietnam. And they were using Royal Navy helicopters, and they would basically fly in, and then they would people would sort of abseil down with chainsaw, well, with axes and bow saws. They would cut down a landing zone, and then basically bring in a hell of a lot of troops. And the newspaper article sort of deals with this. 1,000 troops moved in 24 hours. The largest helicopter operation since the beginning of the Malayan emergency was launched yesterday. In the past 24 hours, 1,000 troops have been carried into the jungle by helicopters of the Royal Navy and the RAF. An interesting thing about this article is there's altogether one brigade of troops, including the 1st Battalion, the East Yorkshire Regiment, the 2nd 10th and the 2nd 6th Gurkha Battalions, a troop of field artillery, and police jungle companies, and the Home Guard are involved. So you've got all these police companies. I haven't put the Home Guard in because I don't really know what they meant by that, but I've got enough. And it talks about who they are. And it says the objective is the entire Communist Committee for Johor, which is known to have been meeting secretly about 8 miles from here, wherever here is, presumably Kulong, Johor, and near the Sembrong River. It is known that Ho Lung, Secretary of the Johor State Committee and a member of the Malayan Politburo, is present with 14 State Committee members. It is confidently predicted that if these leaders are killed or captured, the communist campaign of terror in Johor and perhaps the whole of southern Malaya will collapse. As yet, only one contact has been made by a corporal of the East Yorkshires who saw 3 terrorists when he was washing in a stream. He dropped his soap and towel and shot dead the leader, the section commander of the committee's guard unit, and with his first round. The committee members are at present moving towards Kulong, and sooner or later they will have to cross the railway or the main bridge, which are being constantly patrolled by police in rail cars and armoured vehicles. I'll go on. Between these two boundaries are deployed 3 battalions. Each patrol draws a blank, it is picked up by a helicopter and dropped into another area. Australian Lincoln bombers, which are in there in turn 3, and Hornet fighters of the RAF can strafe the area in case the terrorists have been avoided in the avoided the patrol in deep jungle. This is what I've been trying to get to. The rapid deployment of the troops made possible by helicopters is a remarkable development in jungle warfare. By midday today, naval helicopters made 210 troop-carrying flights, each with 5 heavily armoured men on board. The turnaround of this helicopter is extraordinarily quick. This morning, one returned to base and took on board its complement of troops and departed in less than 30 seconds. Each machine trails a 12-foot knotted rope, for many of the jungle clearings are too rough to permit landings, and the helicopter then hovers while the young national servicemen scramble to the ground. Well, I've finished the rest of the article. This morning, your correspondent flew over the area in a light helicopter. The terrain looks almost impassable, with swamp on either side of the river, and the jungle was extremely thick. But here and there are small clearings, some no more than 50 yards in diameter, where helicopters were landing troops. So it's all pretty interesting stuff when you start to get into the sort of the research. And now this isn't a game where you can really sort of play it in the sense that you know it's an insurgent sort of setup. But these are both insurgent units. I've been going on for 9 minutes now, but these are the units referred to. So this is the 1st Battalion. I put 3 companies of it. I did do it as in 1 battalion, but I thought, well, hang on, that sucks. You know, sort of just instead of 1 unit, put 3, and you can do the surround. 3 companies from the East Yorkshire. There's the field artillery, and I put 2 companies of Gurkhas for the 2-6 and 2 companies of Gurkhas for the 2-10, and you get to airland them all. So it's really exciting. And the thing is, I mean, it's obvious, really. I mean, you just surround around like that, but you've got to sort of pretend that you don't. So what I'm using is almost a hammer anvil type strategy. This is following a line here. So really, I'm just going to sort of. I wonder if it works. What's that? it's been so long since I've done. Oh, commit air insertion. Oh, I was thinking, oh no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yeah, so basically what we're doing there is, if you're new to air insertions, you put in the unit in there and it's showing you what's around and what the anti-aircraft. Basically it's safe. So I complete the air insertion and it shows me the result, because there could have been an attack, so that's okay. It's a bit faffy, I know, but, and in theory I'm inserted. So unfortunately I have to sort of do that with everything, but I'm going to sort of try and pretend that I'm doing a fair insertion. So again, I've got to commit the air insertion, because you might not want to after you've seen what the odds are or the situation is. That's just for the results. And that's that. Did I press the button? I'll put them there. It's one of these games where, I mean, I don't want to get into artificial intelligence or anything like that, but you're supposed to sort of not know where the insurgents are, and of course I can't model that, so it's not a sort of a big challenge really. I've toyed with forcing, not so much recommending optional rules, that things that you just do yourself, so you could put on a bit of paper your sweeping pattern, how you're going to sweep these jungles, and then you commit to it, and you also have a sweeping pattern for this, and then you basically roll them out almost like operational command. But it's not really not worth it. But I'm kind of enjoying this game. I'm a bit stressed because I've only talked for so long and I've only got a few minutes left as ever. But the point being, and here's the field artillery. Well, I think the field artillery needs to go somewhere central, maybe there. The reason I'm sort of enjoying is, recently I've just been getting into these really big games, and I don't really like the big games. And this is just so simple. I mean, I'm not saying because I want to win, but it's you can get your head around it quite simply. And I was just considering back, the amount of time it takes, for example, to create that Musul game. There's another scenario, something Aden. I don't know where Aden is. It's the Middle East somewhere, I think. British troops, they go into, there's basically a lot of riots. I can't remember where it is, but basically they go in there and they go marching through the town, playing their bagpipes, and the sound of the bagpipes basically scares all the enemy away. And it's a little game like that, and you sort of think, all you've got to do is march down into the town, take your troops, and all the troops run away. It's a bit like the football war, or whatever it's called, the little South American border conflict up in the marshes, and minimal conflict. I know it takes a long time to land everything, but this was a big operation. This is one of the biggest operations of the Malayan emergency, and just a little, I've got less than a minute now, just a little thing on why it's called an emergency and not a war. There are a lot of industrialists and landowners, and if it was called a war, they wouldn't have got insurance when they lost. If their factory got burnt down or something, and it was a war, they wouldn't get their insurance payout. And so they basically agreed to call it an emergency, and the emergency went on for 12 years. But it's sort of to give you an idea. I mean, there are about 2,000 troops here, in total, against 80. So it's a bit generous on their side. But this is pretty much about as big as it gets. This is one of the largest operations that I'm aware of. It's nearly 15 minutes, so I don't know whether I'll do another one, but maybe. See how that works out. So maybe I'll see you soon. Okay. So lots of talking. All the troops landed. Could have maybe made it an even bigger map instead of a taller map, but it sort of doesn't matter really. So obviously not the sort of grand strategy that you might feel there's some I don't know purpose to actually play. Now I think if I was to be sort of landing lots of troops, you know, you might sort of use a pattern like that, but from the article that I read out, I got the feeling that they sort of chose particular areas and then swept them, and then returned to the helicopters, and then went to another place, and then, you know, did a sweep. It does also mention that as soon as they finished their sweep, they got into the helicopters and went to the next place. So what I can't do in this campaign is airlift in, then airlift out. I do intend to do that. I've been intending to do it for a long time now, and probably will be intending to do it for a lot longer. But anyway, so we've just lifted everyone in. The police can't really do much, but these guys, in theory, can move. How much movement have they got left? So the net closes. 0 movement. So now it's the Malayan National Liberation Army's turn. Okay, now when irregulars are complete, they'll be able to attack a unit like that at strength 5, or it might be strength 4, which is pretty good. But currently, if they're attacked, they've got a very high probability of evading. So they're 50% done as irregulars. That's why they've got that. They're just infantry, but so they're pretty potent. They've got a little more movement. I'm not sure how that will work in the jungle. Let's see. Now, I think what I'm going to do is, just to play game, I'm going to split them. So, well, it's only 1.5, so he's let's just look. Yeah, the zones of controls affect them, but he doesn't want to attack into there because not only is he 2, but he's in jungle, so he'll probably be null modifier. Which I have no idea what the modifier will be. Okay, so I mean, there's not a lot of choice. I think, you know, to play this sort of game, it's more almost tactical. You know, I mean, reducing it to company level is probably being a bit generous. It's more a sort of, can you know, there's probably a lot more scope to evade, but there probably should, you know, if it was one of these games that was geared up for this type of activity, a chance to identify, so you wouldn't know where they were. You'd just be moving around on a map that was a lot larger, a lot more hexes, a lot more porous, because obviously we know what's happening here, and I don't know, so we're already closing the net. Now these are military police, but then I'm not sure whether they are military police. It just says police. I select them as military police in my little sort of unit identifier thing. But now I'm wondering whether they should be military police or just police. It doesn't matter anyway. They can't attack, so I just envision them as people with batons and maybe the odd pistol. I don't know. So that's my movement. I think most things should be moved. The field artillery. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's okay. Now he can fire on both, so he's centralised. So, well, let's see what we can do here. When you're ready. My laptop is always stonking. I mean, you might not be able to hear the fan going as much now that I've got my microphone, but it's always on full blast. It's just, I don't know what it is. I don't think it's old. I think whoever makes these browsers and all these websites are just loading them up heavy on JavaScript, and they just eat up all this RAM. It's always maxed out. All I have to do is open up about 10 or 20 browser windows. It's stonkered. Okay, so I got a really bad die roll, but I got 5 to 1 odds, but he got away. So he got a DR. Now, I'm always a bit vague on the progress, and obviously, if this is a more commercial game, I'd probably have to pay a little more attention. But basically, there's a percentage chance that they actually get affected. So in this case, I hope that didn't bugger things up too much. In this case, they've gone there. Oh, this is sort of interesting. So they escaped. This is maybe another reason why I was sort of interested in playing this game, because it's the first time I've had a proper insurgent role. I mean, they are irregular role, and so far it seems to be working out. Come on. So that's a 2 to 1. So they didn't get depressed, but these units did. But they didn't retreat. So how you would equate that, I'm not sure whether that's really, I'm really too happy with that, but it's now the insurgents, it's now the Malayan National Liberation Army's turn. Well, this is where it sort of gets interesting, because they're stuck in the zone of control. But they haven't been able to get too far. So obviously, key to what is going on here is to try and get to the, well, it's to try and make it so that they can't widget their way out of zones of control. Now, I say that tentatively because I have been sort of toying with the idea of not having them affected by zones of control. It's just to get around to that. I'm not sure what I've decided on. I might have sort of written it down somewhere, and at this stage, I'm not sure whether that would be wise, because they would be affected by a zone of control, but because they'd be moving a lot slower, they'd be moving a lot more cautiously. They wouldn't have freedom of movement straight through, so that would sort of reflect that they're going at a slower pace. But I think it could be argued. I'm not going to argue it now. So that's their turn. So I think what they really want to be doing is doing their best to stop them running away. Oh, another combat. I'm going to commit the artillery onto the other attack because they've been demoralised. And they got away. Oh, yes. Now, they're on the edge of the board, so it's sort of, what can they do? I'm actually quite interested in how this works out because I've not played a game like this where the full effect of being in a regular unit comes to its own, and clearly it is in this situation. A DE result, 6-1, a DE, and they just got away. No result. But look at that, they retreated in this direction. They got a DE from there and retreated. So it's interesting. It's a shame this is on the edge of the board because it's sort of, they go off and there's no going off on this. You can't leave the board unless it's artificial. The edge of the world as we know it. Okay. Well, he's going to move down here. In theory. This is what my fan sounds like. Really high, and then gets really even higher. It's just like, I can't, it's the middle of winter here in stupid land, and it's just always on. I know I need a new laptop. So, what does he do? I mean, it's like really doesn't want to go into, get stuck into here, so I think he's really only got one choice. That's there. So now here we have the Australian Lincoln bomber and some RAF Hornets. So he's depressed 1. He can afford to stay there. Let's see what the Lincoln bomber can do. I think that's the first time. Why does it happen sometimes and not others? I'll have to sort that out at some point. I know. Okay, well the police should be able to help in blocking at least. It's sort of interesting. It's it doesn't feel particularly strategic to me. If it was just chasing these 2 balls around the field. Let's see what we can do here. I'm not going to commit them. I'm wondering whether it would. 7-1 odds DE, and they just ran away over there. No depressions. So interesting. It's another 15-minute slot. I'm not sure I'm going to continue this because I don't want to sort of spend just 15 minutes chasing things around. So yeah, I'll speak to you later. Bye. Okay. I'm not sure that was as smooth as it could have been. I'm going to go for one more round, one more 15-minute blast, just to see what we can do. Because it could be that I may need to change these irregulars, but the thing is they can't do much. In turn, I'm not sure what I did there. Okay. Come on. Look at that, he's broken free of zones of control. Look at that. So he's broken free of the zone of control. And looks like he's in zone of control. That's very interesting. Yeah. The thing is, it's a bit unsatisfying in a sense that it's one of these things that could just go on forever. Okay, let's try the Hornets first. No, let's try the Lincoln Bombers. Ah, gotcha. And now the Hornets. That's the way to do it. Evil cackling. Interesting. To play it again, you'd really have to sort of like land so that you could envelop them, stop them running away, use the air power, but that's not how it worked. I don't think in sort of reality they chased them around like this. You know, I think that it was a case of they had to find them. But that was quite interesting how he got away, because he's irregular, he has superior movement through the jungles. You know, I think maybe, I mean, everything is open for development, but I think to maybe somehow make this, I don't want to say more interesting, but to give it another dimension, it could be a possibility of actually giving them something on the board that they have to do to stay on the board. So you know, obviously they might want to be, you know, occupying some of these locations, but the thing is they weren't really going into the built up areas. They were in the jungle, where it's quite interesting really, because you know the Malayan Communist Party, they didn't get arms from China, which was something that you know was significant in how things worked for them. I mean, essentially, the you know communism, you know, around the world at that point was pretty much funded by Russia, you know, especially in places like Cuba and Africa. And well, it's funded. I don't want to say too much, but I'm pretty sure China was funding people as well. But they didn't fund the Malayan Communist Party at all. You know, they weren't shipping in arms, so they had no ammunition supply, they had no arms supply, but they also had no food supply. The British would basically keep all supplies under control. Everything was rationed, and food farms were basically controlled, and they were starving the communists out. And basically, that you know, the harder they treated them, the further into the jungle the Malayan National Army, the Malayan National Liberation Army units went, and they survived for 12 years, but they will grow their own food, which gives you a sort of an indication of exactly how long term the strategy was. I mean, it's not as though you just grow, you know. I mean, hunting, yeah, I can understand that. You go out and maybe hunt some rabbits, and presumably they did that as well. But you don't go out and sort of grow a piece of corn, you know, on the cob. It takes quite a while, but so presumably, and you don't, you know, I can hardly imagine, well, hardy members of ISIS growing stuff, especially out in their harsh environment. So presumably they were peasant farmers in a lot of cases, and I don't know. Presumably they were sort of, you know, they used farms. They grew crops on farms of their own, but maybe they were a little more discreet about where they were located, and you know, old farms or whatever. But anyway, they were not funded at all, and that was a problem for them because they couldn't afford anything. The article that I was reading in the book basically, is this it here? Yeah, no. Operation Hawk. And there's the, can't really see it, but that's the helicopter, and they're getting a dog on there. Dogs. But, as you can see, I went into the library and sort of zapped it a few times, only on some of the interesting pages. Who that is. It's a pictorial history, so there's one of the helicopters. This is Operation Apollo. So I might do that one next. That's how I got the idea. There you go, Operation Agile. I'll do them all, you know, bit by bit. They just, you know, they just all look so interesting, really. But playing them is probably not going to be that great if this is about as big as they get. There was no sort of, I don't think there were any sort of frontline assaults. It was an insurgent war all the way through, and it wasn't even a war, as I said earlier. It was an emergency. But this is quite a lot of activity, and yeah, I think it's intriguing for the simple fact that it was the first time they'd done this sort of airborne insertions. Now, obviously, made, you know, commonplace in Vietnam, which is yet to come. And but also it's famous for being the first the first campaign where they went for hearts and minds. When they started off, they went around razing the villages, you know, not razing them as in putting them on stilts, burning them down and killing everyone. That was the British, and they moved on to a campaign, the first campaign, that's what the book says, of the concept of winning hearts and minds, which obviously again famed in Vietnam. And I think, if I'm not incorrect, that the what they achieved in this war or this emergency was actually afterwards, because they'd only sort of stumbled on it. Afterwards, it was actually used as a benchmark for fighting insurgencies because they did it really well. The air insertions, the Hearts and Minds campaign, etc., etc. And it's just so interesting, really, because as I do these sort of things, I should really be hunting these people down, shouldn't I? Can I play the game and talk? Multitasking. It shouldn't be that difficult, should it? But as I sort of do these games, you know, what I'm trying to get to is each one is rich in its own pedigree, so to speak. I mean, what I'm saying here is, you know, this is the Malayan emergency. This is a silly little game from 1953, but it's got a huge amount of history behind it. and that's one of the things I'm trying to get across with this site is to sort of just not is to explore the history and with the battles, and it doesn't matter whether they're not ideal like here. You can get an understanding, and there was a site I was looking at. It was called Playing History, I think. I sort of half read it as I was didn't attack, did I? Well, he's going to move down there. In the zone of control. He now, because he's moving, he won't recover his depressions. What I'm saying is, it's easy to sort of just skip over Malayan emergency and done and dusted and write it off as something that you've done. But although they're not particularly massive as games, that's because it's the Malayan turn. Stupid. There's a huge amount. I've got this book. I think I mentioned it before. It's written by the National War Museum, and it's got all the British engagements. And I'm slowly becoming, I wouldn't say expert, but the whole idea of this is to learn about everything, and to help other people learn about everything as well. Sort of shares and being gay about it all, but I mean, hopefully, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, oh right, yeah, the Malayan emergency. Oh right, okay. I never heard of that before. And now it becomes something that you develop. Oh, look at that. We got him. Defender eliminated, and he didn't run away. Hurrah! Hurrah! So you really don't need the troops. Just go after them with bombers. Now, one thing that they did say in one of the books that I've read a few books actually, so I can't remember where it came from, but there was a lot of, you just saw a Lincoln bomber there. There was a lot of bombing, aerial bombing, and sometimes from as high as 5,000 feet because of the terrain. And it's criticised because they weren't really getting a return on investment, so to speak. They were doing a lot of bombing and not really noticing any significant effect on it. So the actual aerial bombardment wasn't really that great, and in this case they only used it, as the article the newspaper says, in order to just sort of double check that the areas that he swept were clean. So we've now caused a depression on that one. Now the interesting thing about this one is he still can't get out of that zone of control. So in reality they would not have been able to would not have been able to use the bombers and fighters to destroy units, because it wasn't happening. They were sort of too elusive for that. And again, I could put in some rules to make irregulars a little less sensitive or vulnerable to airstrikes, because. But I think maybe they shouldn't run away as quickly either. You're welcome to go that way, matey. Less than a minute. Let's see what we can do. I'm not going to put that one in because I don't want to run the risk of it crashing or something. I'm interested. DR. Depression 3. Okay, 10 seconds left. So that's the state of play. Obviously, it's a bit of a cat and mouse game. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll maybe speak to you later. Bye.